tech way, whichever way the situation may be. In today's video, I'm going to be putting together a build in this Deepcool Tesseract case. I chose the white one for this case just to be a little bit different. We're going to be building with the Ryzen5 2400G. With all the parts added together, without Windows, this system comes in right under $500. I got under $500 because I found a pretty good deal on RAM sticks, which everybody knows RAM sticks they're starting to come down in price, but they're still pretty expensive. But you stay tuned, and I will show you how to put together a Ryzen 5 system in this Deepcool case. Today we're going to be doing a build guide. I'm going to be building this Deepcool Tesseract case, the white one. Parts we're going to be putting into this system. We'll start with the motherboard. We got the GIGABYTE B450M DS3H. We have the Corsair CR550 80 plus bronze certified. Here's our Windows, Microsoft Windows OEM, because it is going to be sold. We have the Ryzen 5 2400G processor. It's got the integrated Vega 11 graphics on it. We have a Kingston 240 gig SSD for the boot up drive. All the games and whatnot that people's going to be putting on it. We got a 1 terabyte hard drive for the mass storage, and we have 8 gigs 2 times 4 gig kit of DDR4 3000 megahertz memory by Viper. It's from Patriot. That's going to be the parts that we're going to get. We're going to put the system together with. Let me get set up here, and we'll get started with the build. You'll need to build your own system. I use a utility knife for opening the boxes. We have a number 2 magnet tip screwdriver. We have a 6-inch extension bit. Makes it nice for getting down around the heat sinks and whatnot. This ain't necessary, but it does make the job a lot easier. Have a pair of side cuts for when you do your cable management. And then we have the zip ties and the bolts and the nuts and the screws that you're going to need that comes with your case right there. So let's get started. First thing we're going to do is take off the side panel. Applying this case is pretty simple. I always put my fans facing down. That way it's pulling in fresh air to cool off the components inside the power supply. You got 4 little feet to stick up here on this case. It's got a little bit of padding on them. You just slide this back in here underneath that lip. Slide all the way towards the back. I'll just put the cables in there for right now, just to get them out of our way. And to secure it to the case, I'm going to get in the baggie that came with the power supply. I'm going to get out the 4 screws that they supply. And these power supplies are made to go both ways depending on your case. So you want to make sure you get these stored in the right holes. Make sure you don't get them going through a vent hole. Mounting screws go. You can actually see the threads. That's the ones you want to make sure you get them started into. Phillips. Pick one. Tighten it down. And these don't have to be extremely tight. You ain't sealing against water or air. Just tighten them down about wrist tight. You know, you don't need them. You don't want them shearing off. You don't want them breaking off. You don't want them pulling out of the threads. Nothing in that lineup. Supply is installed. The thing we're going to do is prep the motherboard to get prepared to go into the case. So I got the Ryzen 5 2400G CPU and graphics. Got the B450M DS3H motherboard, and we have the RAM. That's what you're going to need to prepare the motherboard for installing into the case. I have a little gold triangle on the edge of it right here. Maybe you can see that in the camera. And on the motherboard there should be a little gold triangle, which I've used this motherboard before, so I know it's right up here in this corner right here. Lift up you seat your CPU down in, and you put the retention lever back down, lock it. Give it a little wiggle, make sure it ain't gonna move, just like that. AMD still ships the motherboards with these plastic tension brackets for the old coolers that they used to give with the CPUs. So you have to take them off, which is pretty simple. You got 4 screws. And you lift the plastic part up off. Coolers that come with the AMD processors, they go one of two ways, either this way or they go this way. The main thing you want to keep in mind, guys, is where your CPU fan header is on your motherboard, which this one is right here. Like I said, I've built with this motherboard before. I'm going to put the fan on this way, and it's going to be a little bit more of a run on the CPU fan header than what if I had to put it the other way. But because this AMD logo right here, it's going to be, it's awful close. It ain't interfering with the RAM, but it's awful close to the RAM. So just to not have to deal with that, we're going to put it on this way today. Get the screws lined up right on the back plate. And you start tightening them down. You just want to get them started. A couple turns on each one to start out with. And then these screws are spring loaded, so you can't over tighten them. You only want them wrist tight. You don't need them extremely tight. Then you want to go back and just snug them down, wrist tight or so. They don't have to be extremely tight. Like I said, I recommend doing in a cross pattern. That way you get even pressure on the CPU cooler, between the CPU cooler and the CPU. Now if you guys look, right here on the motherboard, you can see CPU fan. You got a 4-pin header on your wire. You got this little notch. Just line them up. And you push it down on, just like that. I'll take a zip tie and I'll tie this cable back some just to kind of keep it out of the way and keep it looking pretty. Up like that, nice and pretty. That's the way you install your CPU and heatsink fan. Now since that's done, we'll go ahead and do the RAM modular manual to see where they want you to use dual channel at it. Like I said, I've used this motherboard several times. I know it starts out in the slot closest to the CPU, skip one, and then the next one. That's for the GIGABYTE B450M DS3H. That's what the manufacturer recommends for dual channel. They pull out your RAM stick here. As you can tell, there's a notch right here in the stick. It's offset some. When you put your RAM down into the modular, down into the socket, you want to make sure it lines up. Yep, that's backwards. Make sure it lines up. Now if I can get you a close look at that or not. But that notch is lining up on the motherboard. Set down, thumb on each corner. One side clicks in, the other side clicks in. Make sure you pull back the retention levers on each side of them. Same way in the second slot. Get down in there where that notch lines up. Yep, just about did it backwards again. There we go, same down in there. One corner clicks, the other corner clicks. And that is your CPU and RAM installed into the motherboard. Now it's ready to go into the case. Board's all prepped, got the RAM on it, CPU heatsink. Looks nice, looks cool. You need to remember to put this here in. It's called the I/O shield. It helps keep the dust and the bugs and the critters and all that good happy stuff out of the case. Kind of just fills in the hole. If you look back here underneath the pan, there's a cutout for it. And when you do it, you want to make sure your audio ports right here is facing towards the bottom in most cases. Yeah, cases in the computer case. Yep. And you need to just make sure it's in the right orientation. If you need to, your motherboard's going to be sitting like this. You can always pick up your motherboard, line it up like this to make sure you get it put in right. Put push it in towards the front of from the inside of the case. Now there's no screws or nothing to hold this in. This is just a friction fit. You get it started up in there. You just push in on the four corners of it. Most of the time you can hear it popping in. Don't worry, it's supposed to pop. It's just the little clips catching that holds it in the spot for you. And that's your I/O shield installed. The board in to secure it down. Since you got your I/O shield in there, you need to look at your standoffs and see where they're placed at. This one here's got standoffs already pre-installed, but they are removable if you need to move them around. On your motherboard, you can tell by the little holes that go through. It's got the little grounding straps around there, how many you need. It looks like you got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7 on this motherboard. GIGABYTE usually puts one extra standoff hole in the motherboards where there ain't gonna be a standoff in the case for it. I don't know why they do this. They've been doing it for years. But no, most cases don't have a spot for a seventh standoff. Basically, you're gonna sit down here. You're gonna line up your screw holes. It's actually easier to do this without the I/O shield in it. Be able to see your standoffs underneath of it. Again, on the extra tool, it's just a little 5mm ratchet socket on a ratchet in the driver. Remove them. Not just to make sure you have enough standoffs, but it's also important that you don't have a standoff where you don't have a hole. You don't want to short out against the back of that motherboard. You don't need them extremely tight, just snug them down. Since we moved them two in them positions, we're going to put it back in here. And we're going to look again, make sure they're in the right spots. That one's right, that one's right. That one's good, that one's good, that one's good, and that one's good. Alright, since we got all them in the right spots, standoffs in the right positions, you know in the right positions, just take your screw, without the motherboard in there, and I test fit mine to make sure I get the right screws for the right threading. That way you don't cross thread them or whatever. You know, and I got 6 of them, because I knew that's what I was going to need. Set the motherboard down in here, put it in a little bit of an angle, make sure your I/O ports go out the back through that I/O shield. And these are awful tiny screws, so this is where a magnet tip comes into play. Yeah, put a little bit of pressure on it to hold it towards that I/O shield, and I get one started. On some of the more expensive cases, this middle standoff spot will actually be a notch that will hold it into place for you. I'll remove that motherboard when I have to make sure of it. You check your I/O shield. And these cheaper motherboards, I mean $70 motherboard, but still cheap compared to most motherboards. You check your grounding straps on your I/O shield and make sure they ain't in your ports. That ain't nothing like trying to plug into HDMI or USB and be a strap in there and you can't use it. And now would be the good time to check that. Just check and make sure everything's popped through clearly and grounding straps ain't none of your ports. And like I said, this motherboard's got 7 holes, but we're only using 6 because GIGABYTE puts this 7th hole here for some reason. That no motherboard, no case I've ever found has a spot for that one. So we're only putting 6 screws in it, which is plenty. We'll go back around. It don't matter which order you do it in. Just go back and snug them down. You don't need them extremely tight. On it, and a 3-pin fan header. We ain't going to use the Molex, so I'm just going to kind of hold it back and tie it up with the rest of the cable here. But right here is the only fan header that's on this case besides your CPU header. There's a notch. There's also a notch. It's like CPU fan was. There's a notch on the connector for the wire. You line up them connectors. And you push it down on there. Fan connector, and it's only a 3-pin fan. It's going to work just fine the same. you're just gonna have one extra pin sticking out that ain't covered, and that's fine. As long as them notches get lined up right, you're hooked up correctly. Position, we're gonna go ahead and hook up the USB 2 cable. It's got one hole that's filled in. Here's your USB connector. Match up the hole that's filled in with the pin that is missing. And you slide down on there. Your front port audio for your microphone and headphones on the front. It says HD audio. There's also a pin missing. Notice it's in a different place than the USB 2, so you can only put it in one spot. And you also got a pin missing on the motherboard itself. So you line up the blacked out hole with the missing pin, and you slide down on there, just like so. Okay, your USB 3. This one here is all black, which is nice. You got a notch right here on the top of it. Right there's the notch. There's a notch in the plate for it right here on the motherboard. Just line up them notches. Sometimes these click, sometimes they don't click. It actually clicked on. Alright, for the front port and umbilicals, the only things left is your power switch, your reset switch, your power LED, and your hard drive activity light. And I know you guys probably ain't gonna see this. I can barely see it. Down here on the motherboard, there's a little diagram that tells you which one plugs into which. Now keep in mind your switches, like your LED switch, your reset switch, and your power switch, it don't matter about positive or negative. Your lights, it does matter. So let's see if I can get these hooked up right. I'm gonna have to go get a magnifying glass. Down on there just like that. Here, it looks like the positive goes to the back of the case. Here we're gonna slide it on. The bottom, like I said, the switches don't matter, negative or positive. It goes on the bottom right beside the HDD light. And then your power switch goes right above that one, which is the third and fourth pin from the back of the computer case. And that one goes on right there like that. 4-pin main motherboard connector, which is right here, done like any other. Your cable's got a clip on it. Your connector on the motherboard's got a notch on it right here. Make sure that clip and that notch is lined up right. But sometimes you have to support the edge of the motherboard with your fingers to get the click in right, like so. Right up here, your 8-pin CPU connector. Just like the 24-pin, should have a notch on the side of it, which is facing towards the motherboard. The 8-pin connector from your power supply, it's got 2 clips on it. Make sure them's facing towards the center of the motherboard where the clip is. Line them up. And you push them down until they click. Got you in this position, we're gonna go ahead and install the hard drives into the case. 3.5-inch drive, you have to pull the sled out, squeeze the prongs together, it slides out. Slide your SSD into your caddy. Make sure you have your connectors for your SATA and your data going out the back of it. And I thought these was originally toolless, but for the 2.5-inch drives, you do have to put screws in. 3.5-inch drives, you do not have to screw them in. Back in it, slide it right back down into the case, and it clicks in, and ain't going no place. 3.5-inch drive is even simpler. Pinch them together, pull the sled out. Make sure your ports is facing towards the back of the sled. See these little notches right here? They go into the screw holes on the side of the drive that you normally screw it in with. This side here, you bend back, and they clip it here into the caddy. Just put the caddy right back in there. Motherboard is right here. 1, 2, and 3. I want 0 for the solid state drive. It's just easier to keep track of in the BIOS. So we're going to plug this one onto here. Then you do have little metal clips on these, and they only fit in one way because of the L on the inside of them. And this one here will slide, goes to the hard drive. It goes right above that one, just like so. And there you go. And for the SSD, it's the same thing. Click it in there in one way by the L shape in the adapter there. So we'll push this one onto this one for the solid state drive. Make sure it's locked down on there good. And then the second one down on the chain slides down on the hard drive. Got all the cables hooked up, everything hardware wise is installed into the case. Let's see if she boots up. Hit the power button. Power light comes on up here at the top. The hard drive activity lights flashed a few times at us. CPU fan is on. Looks like the back exhaust fan is on. I just noticed this Gigabyte board's got a little bit of orange LED to it. Maybe we can go in and change that to a blue or turn it off or something. That way it matches the back fan. But yeah, guys, that's how easy it is to build a system nowadays. This Deepcool case, it's the Deepcool Tesseract case. That's a pretty good little case for 50 bucks. There's a few things I don't like about it. But if you want my final thoughts on the case, you'll have to watch another video when I do the unboxing and overview of the case. Because I'll come out and tell you what I don't like about it. But for this video, I think it pretty well wraps up the build part of it. If you liked what you've seen here today, make sure you hit that like button or hit that dislike button if you don't like what you've seen here today. Leave me a comment if you think there's something else I should have done or should have covered a little bit better in this video. And if you like what you saw, make sure you hit that subscribe button. That way you get notified the next time I put out any videos. If you'd like to have this, buy this system or buy one like this or have me build one for you if you still don't feel comfortable building your own, if you go down under the About page, you got my direct email. Shoot me an email and we can work out a deal for me to build you one. But I think that pretty well wraps it up, guys. Until next time, y'all be safe and have a good day. And I'll see you in the next video.